Hey everybody, it's Natalie Barnes here from Beyond the Reef Patterns. You've landed on the holiday edition of Stitch. Now before you go running and screaming, give me a moment. It's really only going to be about 8 or 10 minutes of your time, and I promise you there is still time to make some handmade gifts. You know, even if we don't call it the holidays, isn't it just the gift-giving season? The hostess gift-giving season? All of the parties and all of the wonderful things that you're doing with others. There's always that time that you want to walk through the door. You know exactly what it is. Oh, really, it's just a little something that I made myself. It didn't take long, just a little something for you to say thank you for having us in your home this evening. Right? I mean, hostess gift season, if nothing more. What do you mean hostess gifts? What are hostess gifts? Oh, come on, you guys have heard of hostess gifts? Come on, hostess gifts, it's a thing, right? Hostess gifts? Come on. Am I dating myself? Hostess gifts? Really? Hostess gifts. Okay, let's get started. We're going to be working on 4 different projects. The first 3 are going to use 5-inch squares. These are 23 pieces of a 5-inch square. This is actually Makers Home fabric by Windham Fabrics. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a moment, but let's go over the projects. The first one is a little table topper called True North. The second one is using a 5-inch tumbler template. It's a little needle keep for all of your makers friends. And the third one is called Tea for 2. It's just a little table topper with some matching coasters. Last but not least, and certainly not made out of 5-inch squares, by the way, we're going to go over something that I know you all know how to do, and in case you don't recognize this, we're going to make pairs of pillowcases. We're going to start by separating those 23 pieces in the Makers Home line into lights, darks, and mediums. We're going to select 4 of the darks right here for the north, south, east, west points that we're going to use. We're going to need a center block for that, and in this case I've chosen one of the black and white medium prints. We're also going to use the tatami prints, the warm and the cool, for those segments. When it comes to making the 9 patches, we're going to use the rest of all of the colored prints here. Some of them will be clear darks, and some of them will actually fall into the mediums in this line of fabrics. Once you've separated out your blacks and whites and grays, I think though that you'll see that these will make clear 9 patches. I've chosen this 6.5-inch ruler. It's great to have this little 1/2 inch when you're cutting in these dimensions. We're going to make sure that our squares are actually 5 inches, and in this case, Windham, thank you very much, they're just a little bit bigger than 5 inches with those pink shears. And these are going to get trimmed to 4.5 inches. So I'm going to do this really quickly, and you'll see that basically I'm going to use all of the 5 inches available to me, and these are going to get trimmed all 4 sides. I'm also going to trim these little tatami pieces into 4.5 inches. Oops. And again, having this 4-inch plus the 1/2 inch on this ruler is really helpful. Then I'm going to trim these into 2.5 inches. Finally, I'm going to take the center block and I'm going to trim that to 4.5 inches. And again, just for perfect accuracy, I'm going to cut all 4 sides. 2 of the black and whites prints are sort of medium, not really lights, and we're going to use those for the snowballing or dog earring of the 2 adjacent sides to make our points north, south, and east and west. So these will literally just be cut into 2.5-inch squares that we will use to make those points. In preparation for a lot of quick sewing, what you might choose to do is take each one of these and from opposite point to opposite point with a light pencil and a straight edge, draw a line. If you prefer the Jenny Doan method, you can press these with your fingers or take them to your pressing mat and press them as shown so that you'll have a line from corner to corner in which to sew. So these are ready to go. I'm also just going to take these whites and lights and cut those into 2.5-inch squares, and the rest of these, cut those into 2.5-inch squares, and we will be ready. Taking your first 4.5-inch square, you're going to put your 2.5-inch square on the corner here, aligning the edges, and you're going to sew from line to line right where you either drew or you pressed this. Once you're done with that, you'll flip it up and you'll end up with something that looks just like this. You'll take your second piece, align those edges again, and sew from corner to corner, and when you flip that up, you'll end up with your point. Remember that when you do this, you're going to want to trim the backs each time that you do this. So you'll end up with 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one, you'll put your little tatami mat piece right sides together, and with a 1/4-inch seam right across there, you'll end up with your first point. Once all 4 of these points are done, then you can start on your 9 patches. So we're going to press these to the dark side, and this will allow us to quote-unquote nest our seams. You might want to put a pin in here if you're unsure of that, but you should be able to feel it. What's happening is one of the seams is going this way, the other seam is going this way, and when you put them together, they're going to bump into each other and nestle into a nice little seam there. This is going to give you good accuracy when you are sewing. And like I said, if you're unsure of that and you can't really feel that difference, put a pin in there. But I think you'll see that nesting is really a good way to get your seams to give you perfect points. I'm just going to run through this really quickly. You can sort of just feel it if you don't pin it. My girlfriend Jill Marie Landis was telling me that she's an author and writer and one of the people that helped me start Beyond the Reef Patterns. She said, well, your video was great, but I didn't understand a thing that you were saying. And I realized, you know, we might be talking about nesting your seams to get perfect points, and people don't really know what in the world we're talking about. So again, I'm just going to put these 2 together, push one down against the other until they're nested together, and run this right through my sewing machine here. You have to bear with me. The Little Singer is a slow machine, but it is a steady machine. How many of you know that a lot of these machines ended up out in the garage because they were broken, quote unquote, when in reality, it was just a matter of getting them threaded correctly. You'll have to read about that sometime, but that's absolute truth. And there you are with a 9 patch. I'm going to finish up the rest of these so we have all of our pieces ready, and I'll show you how this block goes together. And this project will be done in a snap. I'll be right back. We're going to arrange these in the following manner. We're going to put a 9 patch here. We're going to put one of our true north arrows next to it, and we're going to sew a 9 patch here. We're going to do the same on the opposite sides, so we'll have 2 rows, and then we're going to do our north and south arrows with that center block, and this top will be done. Let's talk about the next project, which is that little needle keep. Let me clear the table here, just like that. And let's talk about this project. This little needle keep is a great stocking stuffer. It's going to be great also if you have a friendship group or a group of people that you get together with that are makers, that you want to just give them a little handmade something. Like I said, you're going to need this Tumbler template. This one happens to say Missouri Star Quilt Company on it because these are all projects that I demoed at the Missouri Star Quilt Company birthday bash. I highly recommend you put that on your bucket list. You're going to need 4 of these tumblers for each one of your needle cases. You're going to sew them together on the thin side, so you'll have an outside and an inside in this case. Put right sides together and sew all the way around this, leaving a little edge open so that you can turn this right sides out. you're going to want to, before you turn right sides out, make sure that you have a piece of batting that's smaller than your 1/4 inch seam all the way around inside, so that when you turn this right sides out, you're going to have some batting in there. Next thing that I did was I did a little echo quilting all the way around this shape. Last but not least, you're going to put a couple of small pieces of your leftover wool from any wool projects that you've got. You can do felt, but I think wool is a nice touch. Just stitch them along the top, add your snap top and bottom, and you're done with your little needle case. We're going to start by separating our 5-inch square packets into medium colors, all of the black and white and grays, and some dark colors. So let me do that here so you can get an idea of what I think is a dark and a light and a medium. These are pretty much our mediums here and our darks. This can be a dark, dark, dark. I think you'll get a sense of this once you take a look at all 23 pieces in the Makers Home line. We're going to cut our darks into 4, and I don't want you to cut them into 4 equal pieces. I want you to branch out and take a little bit of a moment and cut these a little bit wonky, if you will. Just cut them any way you like, but make sure that they are different sizes. I still used my rotary cutter and my straight edge, but I didn't want these to all be the same. When we put these blocks together, which are simple 4 patches, I think you'll see it adds more texture, it adds more interest in these blocks when they're different sizes. We're going to then choose one of our light pieces of fabric, put that in the center, and sew on and all the way around that block. What I mean by that is simply this. We're going to sew onto our block, and you'll notice I didn't measure. I just plopped it down in the center. Whoop, helps to have your glasses on. And I'm going to turn and go around. And I'm going to turn and go around. And at the very end, I'm going to sew right off. You're going to ask me, now won't you see those stitches? Absolutely, you'll see those stitches, but then once you get it quilted, you really won't see those stitches at all. At this point, you're going to very specifically cut these into 4 pieces because we're going to want to make accurate 4 patches. You're going to go to your 2.5-inch side on this ruler, and you're going to cut this in half and then cut it in half again. So you'll have 4 pieces like this. Now, let me back up and tell you that you certainly can chain piece all of these if you like. We are on a time crunch after all. I think I have a party to attend on Saturday, and they're big tea drinkers. This would be perfect. So I'm going to chain piece these. You can see how we get a lot of these together. Once you make those and once you cut a lot of them up, you're going to see that you're going to end up with a lot of these little 2.5-inch pieces here. Let me clean off my area. Somebody also told me that I'm a very messy sewer and that I need to keep my area more clean. So let me do that. So we're going to put these together in random color order, and I think you can see that when they go together, they're not going to be a square and a square. They're going to be sort of a little bit wonky. You're going to make 10 of these for the table topper, and then the remainder of them you're going to use your medium value for the background and more dark squares for the centers of your coasters. I think you can see that right here. These are the medium value colors that we talked about. Last but not least, we're going to tackle pillowcases. These are one of the easiest gifts that you can make for someone. We're going to do pillowcases by the pair. You're going to cut 2 pieces 27 inches long by the width of fabric and trim off the selvage. You're going to cut 2 pieces 10 inches by width of fabric and cut off the selvage so that they are the same size. Next comes the burrito. or the sushi roll, or just the plain old roll technique. We're going to lay out our cuff material right side up. Now my table isn't quite big enough, so we're just going to work on this end. Next thing you're going to want to do is take your material for the body, and you're going to put right sides together right along the edge of your cuff material. If you'd like, you can throw a few pins in there to hold it. About 2 inches down from where that edge is, you're going to fold up that body fabric and just start rolling it. Keep rolling it. You can see that we're getting close here. I think you are set. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your cuff material and you're going to put right sides to the wrong side here, and with your pins you're going to pin that whole thing together. How is that going to work, you say? Magic, I say. Once you have the whole thing pinned together, you can see you've got a little bit of roll inside of your cuff. Stitch right along that edge, and once you're done with that seam, this is what you will have, and the magic begins. Are you ready for this? This is so easy, so easy. Just start pulling, and lo and behold, you end up with, wait for it, as the French would say, since we're going to tackle French seams, voila. Finished seam on this side and finished seam on this side. Take this to your ironing board and press both of these seams open. That's one seam. Here comes the second seam. Once that is pressed, you're going to put wrong sides together. I don't know why the French seam gets such a bad rap, because it's so easy to do. You're going to sew around your pillowcase, wrong sides together. This I would sew with a 1/4 inch seam. It's going to end up looking like, where is it? This. All sewn together, but you can see that seam's right there. Seam number 2. For seam number 3, we're going to turn this inside out, right side in, inside out. We're going to make sure with a little poker that our corners are square. And with maybe that 5/8 inch or at least a 1/2 inch seam, we're going to sew our third seam, 1, 2, 3, across here and down the side. And what you'll end up with is a seam that has encased that raw edge. So whenever these are washed, you will have no fraying, you will have no problems with any of the seams, because all of your raw edges are encased. And that is how you end up with this beautiful pillowcase that has no raw edges on the inside or the outside or on the inside. And that, my friends, is a French seam. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Stitch. If you have, give us a thumbs up. Remember, you can find all of the information about where to purchase Windham Fabrics at the Windham Fabrics website. There's a link in the description box. There'll be a link to each and every one of these free patterns for you. My way of saying happy holidays from my home to yours. After all, it is Makers Home Fabrics.